We saw before that bacteriophage, when they infect their bacterial host cell, can cause that bacterial host cell to start changing its behavior. For example, it can cause the host cell to start making toxins. It turns out that some animal viruses can also change the behavior of their animal host cell. And an example of an animal virus that can do this is human papillomavirus, or HPV. And the change that it causes is that it can infect epithelial cells. It can infect healthy epithelial cells and cause them to become tumor cells. And if those tumors start spreading, it can then result in cancer. And so it's known that there are some strains of human papillomavirus that can cause cervical cancer. And so what we'll take a look at is just generally the mechanism behind that. So how can a viral infection lead to tumor formation? And so to understand how human papillomavirus can do this, it'll first help to maybe remember from cell biology that if you take a look at a normal animal cell, there are proteins that you find in there that normally function in slowing down cell division. So there's something called p53 that can stop or slow down cell division, and likewise there's something called retinoblastoma protein that can stop or slow down cell division. And you might be thinking, well, why would a healthy cell ever be interested in slowing down its division? And one of the reasons why is because it's kind of a way for cells to check themselves, right? So if a cell happens to have any DNA damage in it, for example, then that's a cell that you would not want to have replicate itself, because if it did, then it would just make other cells that have damaged DNA, and then that can cause a problem in that particular tissue. So it's a good idea to stop or slow down cell division every now and then, particularly if there is something abnormal with that cell. So that's all the setup for this. These are again proteins that normally slow down cell division. It turns out that infection with human papillomavirus causes these proteins to go away. So human papillomavirus actually makes a protein that can disable those proteins that we were just taking a look at. And so whenever that happens, you might guess what that results in. So when those proteins are gone, that means that there are less things that can slow down or stop cell division. Another way of saying that is that cell division can start occurring rapidly and uncontrollably. And that's basically what leads to tumors. And again, if that spreads, that's what can lead to cancer. So it turns out that that's just one example of how how infection with animal virus can cause its host cell to start acting differently. So human cells, in this case, we're talking about HPV. We've mentioned that human cells normally produce proteins that can slow down or control cell division. When you consider those proteins, what HPV does when it infects a host cell is that it produces its own protein that can disable these ones right here. And so again, just one example of how an animal virus can cause a behavioral change in the host cell. And it turns out that there's even other viruses that can cause cancer, and the way that they do that is a little bit different. So there's different ways that viral infection can lead to cancer.